On the eve of our engagement party, my fiancée, a woman who only had eyes for the one that got away, suddenly agreed to the merger between our two families. Her only condition was that her childhood sweetheart had to be my best man. On the wedding day, that same man snatched the ring right out of my hand. Then, standing before the entire crowd, he proudly presented their marriage certificate. "Liam," he smirked, "Catherine said marrying you is just for show. I'm the one she really loves." When I turned to my fiancée, she was just as composed. "I've already given you the dignity you deserve," she said coolly. "Julian is a sweet, kind soul. Don't you dare bully him, Liam." I calmly said, "Okay," and immediately found myself a new wife who needed the money, signing the papers that same week. Later, that same ex-fiancée knelt before me, begging me, through her tears, to divorce my wife and marry her instead. Adapted American novel. I stood before the mirror, adjusting my bow tie, but my fingers wouldn't stop trembling. The man in the reflection wore a custom six-figure tuxedo, a white rose pinned to his lapel with a small tag that read groom. His face, which should have been beaming, was instead clouded over with a storm of resentment. "Mr. Blackwood, it's time," my assistant, Kevin, murmured from outside the door. I took a deep breath and picked up the ring box from the vanity. Inside sat a 5-carat pink diamond. It had cost me nearly $500,000 from Catherine's favorite designer on Fifth Avenue. Now, it was about to be placed on her finger, sealing the corporate merger between our two families. "Is Julian Reed here?" I asked, my voice flat. Kevin's expression soured. "He's here, in the bridal suite." A cold, humorless laugh escaped my lips. I smoothed my cufflinks and strode out of the room. Down the long hall, the first chords of the wedding march began to play. It was time for the show to begin. 3 days ago, Catherine Vance had stormed into my office. She wore the Chanel suit I'd bought her, her 12-centimeter heels clicking like ice chips on the marble floor. She was a blizzard in human form, blowing into my world with chilling purpose. "I'll agree to the engagement," she announced, her long, manicured fingers tapping against the mahogany of my desk. "But I have one condition." I put down the quarterly report I was reviewing and looked up at her. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, tracing the sharp, perfect line of her jaw. Catherine was beautiful, but it was a dangerous kind of beauty, like a diamond dagger in a museum display. Brilliant, but deadly. "And what's that?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. She lifted her chin, exposing the elegant column of her neck, a sight I'd seen countless times across the room at charity galas. "I want Julian Reed as the best man." I almost laughed out loud, forcing me to have my fiancé's true love as my best man. What kind of twisted soap opera plot was this? "Why?" I forced the word out, my hand clenching into a fist beneath the desk. Catherine turned to face the window, her posture as straight and unyielding as a skyscraper. "He's my most important friend. I want him there." "Friend?" I scoffed internally. Everyone in our circle knew Julian Reed was her childhood sweetheart, the man she'd carried a torch for over the last decade. My marriage to Catherine was nothing more than a strategic alliance between Blackwood Enterprises and Vance Holdings. It was mutually beneficial. But even for a business deal, this level of humiliation was a step too far. "And if I refuse?" She turned back, a triumphant smirk playing on her red lips. "Then the deal is off. And you know, Liam, Vance Holdings doesn't need this merger to survive anymore." She was lying. I knew all about the financial crisis brewing at her family's company. 3 failed overseas projects had bled their cash flow dry. They desperately needed an infusion of capital from my company. But she was betting I wouldn't call her bluff, that I'd swallow my pride for the sake of my family's interests. "Fine," I heard myself say, "as you wish." Now, I stood at the end of the aisle, watching Catherine walk toward me on her father's arm. She was breathtaking. Her custom Valentino gown shimmered under the lights, and her face, beneath the delicate veil, was a work of art. But her eyes, those cool, collected eyes, were locked on Julian, who stood right beside me. Dressed in his groomsman's tuxedo, Julian was handsome and lean, and he was smiling right back at her. The sight of it was a physical pain, like a shard of glass in my eye. The officiant began the vows, and I responded on autopilot. When it came time to exchange rings, I pulled the priceless diamond from my pocket. Just as I was about to slide it onto Catherine's finger, Julian stepped forward and snatched the ring from my grasp. Gasps echoed through the venue. Julian, Catherine cried out, her tone more surprised than angry. Julian held the ring up high. With his other hand, he pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket and dramatically unfolded it for all to see. Liam, did you really think she was going to marry you? Look at this. A marriage certificate. Theirs. The date was 3 days ago, the same day she had come to my office and agreed to our engagement. Catherine said this whole thing was just for show, Julian announced, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction as he shot me a defiant look. I'm the one she really loves. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. The eyes of every guest in the room felt like daggers pointed at my back. I turned to Catherine, waiting for an explanation. She just frowned and tugged on Julian's sleeve. Julian, this isn't how we agreed to do this. Then she looked at me, her voice terrifyingly calm. Liam, I've already given you the dignity you deserve. Julian is a sweet, kind soul. Don't you dare bully him. A sweet, kind soul? I almost burst out laughing. Crashing a wedding is sweet. Humiliating me with a marriage certificate is kind? A murmur rippled through the guests. I could hear snippets of conversation. Oh my God, did Catherine Vance actually? This is a complete disaster for the Blackwoods. I always heard there was something between her and Julian. So much for a friendly merger. Camera flashes started going off like fireworks. Tomorrow's headlines were already writing themselves. Billion-dollar merger implodes as Vance heiress humiliates fiancé at the altar. I took a deep, steadying breath, shoving all the rage, humiliation, and pain into the deepest recesses of my heart. I knew Catherine too well. She was waiting for me to lose control, to scream and shout like some pathetic, jilted lover. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. Okay, I said calmly, even managing a small smile. I wish you both the best. Catherine froze, clearly blindsided by my reaction. Julian was stuck in place, his prepared victory speech now useless. I turned, walked to the edge of the stage, picked up a glass of champagne, and downed it in one go. The alcohol burned my throat, but it was nothing compared to the fire raging inside me. I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant. Freeze all capital transfers to Vance Holdings. Immediately, and initiate Plan B. After hanging up, I saw Catherine marching toward me, her train dragging hastily behind her. Liam, she hissed, her voice low. What do you think you're doing? I swirled the empty champagne flute, my smile unwavering. Just as you wanted, Catherine. It was all for show. Now the show's over, and it's time to clean up. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes. You know Vance Holdings needs that capital right now. That's your problem, not mine. I cut her off. And by the way, thank Julian for me. If it weren't for his little performance today, I wouldn't have had such a perfect reason to pull out of the deal. Her face went pale. You planned this. I didn't answer. I placed my glass on a passing waiter's tray, straightened my tuxedo, and walked toward the exit without a backward glance. Behind me, I heard Julian's shrill voice. Liam, you think you can threaten her? Who the hell do you think you are? I didn't turn back. As I stepped out of the hotel, the July sun was so bright it made my eyes water. I ripped the boutonniere from my lapel and tossed it into a trash can. I took out a cigarette, but my hand was shaking too much to light it. Need a light? A soft voice asked from my side. I turned to see a woman I didn't recognize, dressed in a simple light blue dress. She was holding out a lighter, its flame dancing in the breeze. Thanks, I said, leaning in to light my cigarette. I took a long drag. And you are? Sophia, she said, putting the lighter away. My friend is getting married here today, too. I think I walked into the wrong ballroom for a second. I saw what happened in there. I let out a bitter laugh. So what? You're here to pity the poor groom. Sophia shook her head, her dark hair catching the light. No, I just wanted to say, you handled that with a lot of class. Class? I stared at her for a moment, searching for a hint of pity in her eyes, but all I found was a strange sincerity. It was irritating. What's class worth? I said, extinguishing the cigarette. After today, the entire city will know I was played for a fool. Sophia pursed her lips. But you didn't give them the satisfaction of a meltdown. That's the real victory. I was about to argue when her phone rang. As she answered it, The color drained from her face. "What is it?" I asked instinctively. "My father." She stammered, her voice trembling. "The hospital just called. He's taken a turn for the worse." "I'm sorry, I have to go." She spun around to run, but on pure impulse, I grabbed her arm. "I'll drive you." On the way to the hospital, I learned that Sophia's father had end-stage liver cirrhosis and needed a transplant. The staggering cost of the surgery was an impossible mountain for a girl from a working-class family to climb. The doctor said, "If he doesn't get the surgery soon," Sophia whispered, her hands twisting together in her lap. Staring at the road ahead, a crazy idea began to form in my mind. "Sophia, let's make a deal." "A deal?" "I'll cover all of your father's medical expenses. The surgery, the aftercare, everything," I said calmly. "On one condition, you marry me." Sophia whipped her head around to face me, her eyes wide with disbelief. Are you kidding?" "I'm dead serious," I said, stopping at a red light and looking directly at her. "I need a wife. You need money to save your father. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "But why me?" "Because you're clean," I said honestly. "You have no connection to my world. Your background is simple. And I thought of what she'd said to me outside the wedding. You have a strange kind of sincerity." Sophia was silent for a long time. It wasn't until the hospital came into view that she finally spoke in a small voice. "I need to think about it." "You don't have much time," I said, pulling the car up to the entrance. "The story about Catherine will be all over the news by morning. I need to strike back fast." She bit her lip. How are you going to strike back?" A smirk touched my lips. "With happiness. I'm going to show everyone that I'm doing better than ever without Catherine Vance." 3 days later, Sophia and I had a signed marriage certificate. That same day, I held a press conference to announce that Blackwood Enterprises was terminating all partnerships with Vance Holdings. I also took the opportunity to introduce my new wife, a simple, kind-hearted nurse. At the press conference, Sophia wore a modest white dress, her palms sweating with nerves. But when I took her hand, she looked at me and gave me a genuine smile. In that moment, it occurred to me that this might not be just a transaction after all. And when I later saw the look of pure shock on Catherine Vance's face on the news, I knew my revenge had only just begun. 3 days after we signed the papers, I drove Sophia myself to my villa in Greenwich. As the car passed through the wrought iron gates, Sophia rolled down her window, her eyes widening slightly. Sunlight filtered through the canopy of old-growth oak trees, dappling her face in light and shadow. This is your home?" she asked, her voice tight. I followed her gaze to the 3-story Georgian-style mansion and suddenly realized how opulent it must seem to a nurse who took the subway to work. "Yeah, I usually live here alone. Now it's the two of us." I parked in front of a large fountain where Arthur, the butler, was waiting with 2 housekeepers. As Sophia stepped out of the car, she flinched, clutching her small handbag. "Mr. Blackwood," Arthur said with a respectful nod. He then turned to Sophia, hesitating for a moment. "And this is my wife, Sophia," I said, naturally draping an arm over her shoulder. "She'll be living here from now on." A flicker of surprise crossed Arthur's face, but he quickly regained his professional composure. "A pleasure to meet you, madam." Sophia's face flushed a deep red. "Oh, you can just call me Sophia," she stammered. I frowned but didn't correct her. This marriage was a contract after all. There was no need to force her into the role of Mrs. Blackwood overnight. As I gave her a tour of the house, I kept a professional distance, like a real estate agent showing a property. First floor is the living area, dining room, and kitchen. Second floor has our bedrooms and the library. Third floor is a game room. There's a gym and a home theater in the basement. "Our bedrooms?" she asked, pausing at the foot of the grand staircase. I raised an eyebrow. "Separate, of course. You'll take the master suite in the east wing. I'm in the west wing." Seeing the relief wash over her face annoyed me for some reason. However, I added, "In public, we need to appear like a normal married couple." Sophia nodded, her gaze drifting toward the sprawling rose garden outside the window. "I get it. We're acting." Once her luggage was settled, I called her into my library. I took a black card from my desk drawer and slid it across the polished wood toward her. "Use this for daily expenses. There's no limit." Sophia stared at the sleek, heavy card, but didn't reach for it. I have a paycheck. You're Mrs. Blackwood now. I cut her off. Wearing fast fashion and taking the subway will raise unnecessary questions. When she still hesitated, I produced a set of car keys. There are a few extra cars in the garage. Pick one. She finally took the card and keys, holding them like they were hot coals. I'll keep a ledger. Track every expense. I couldn't help but smile. Whatever you want. I then handed her a leather-bound folder. This is the contract. You should review the terms. She looked down and began to read, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. I noticed her fingernails were neatly trimmed, clean and pink without any polish. Attend a minimum of 3 social events together per week. Monthly family gatherings. Must hold hands in front of the media. She read the clauses aloud softly, then looked up. What does "shall not interfere in the other's private life" mean? I leaned back in my leather chair, steepling my fingers. Exactly what it says. To the world, this marriage is real. Between us, it's a business deal. What you do and who you see in your private time is your own business. Sophia bit her lip. And my father's surgery. It's already been scheduled, I said, opening my laptop and pulling up a medical file. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at Presbyterian General. Dr. Matthews, the top transplant surgeon in the state, will be leading the team. All costs have been prepaid. Her eyes instantly welled up. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to touch the screen. Dr. Matthews. I've been on his waiting list for 6 months. He's your father's primary surgeon now, I said, closing the laptop with an air of finality. There will be a team of private nurses providing 24-hour care post-op. You don't have to worry about a thing. A tear finally escaped and fell onto the Persian rug. She hastily wiped her face with the back of her hand. I am sorry. Don't apologize, I said, handing her tissue. This is just part of the deal. That night, I worked in my library until 2 in the morning. When I opened the door, I saw a light on in the living room. Sophia was curled up on the couch, fast asleep. On the coffee table in front of her was a bowl of what looked like soup, covered with plastic wrap, and a few small plates of crackers. A post-it note was stuck to the bowl. It read, I heard you have stomach problems that don't work all night on an empty stomach. Sophia. I stared at that note for a long time. For the first time in the 5 years I'd lived here, the house felt warm. The next morning, my assistant Kevin brought me the latest updates. Mr. Blackwood, it's chaos over at Vance Holdings, he said, handing me a tablet. After we pulled our funding, their overseas projects came to a dead halt. Now the banks are calling in their loans. I glanced at the screen, a grim smile touching my lips as I saw their stock price plummet. How's Catherine handling it? Ms. Vance. She called an emergency board meeting yesterday. I heard she threw a glass against the wall, Kevin said in a low voice. Rumor is she's scrambling to find new investors, but no one's willing to touch it. I nodded. Keep an eye on them. What's the status of Plan B? We've already made contact with 3 of their major shareholders. 2 have expressed interest in selling their stakes, Kevin reported, then hesitated. Sir, there are some on our board who feel our move against Vance is too aggressive. Tell the board, I interrupted, they can either support my decision or they can find a new CEO. After Kevin left, I noticed Sophia standing at the top of the stairs, holding a thermos. I made you breakfast, she said, looking a little nervous. Are you leaving? I have a meeting, I said, taking the thermos. I opened it to find steaming vegetable soup and a perfectly made omelet. You made this? Sophia nodded. I saw the kitchen was fully stocked. I hope it's okay. I took a bite of the omelet. It was surprisingly delicious. It's good. I checked my watch. I have to go. You're heading to the hospital today, right? Have the driver take you. Oh, no, she said, waving her hands. I can just take the subway. Sophia. I put the thermos down and met her eyes. Remember, you're Mrs. Blackwood now. Mrs. Blackwood does not take the subway to visit her sick father. Understand? She stared at me for a moment, then slowly nodded. I understand. As I drove away, I saw her in the rearview mirror, still standing in the doorway. The morning sun cast a golden halo around her slender frame. A strange feeling stirred in my chest, but I shook it off and hit the gas. The scene at the hospital was more stressful than I'd anticipated. By the time I arrived after my meeting, Sophia's father was out of surgery, but still in the ICU. I found Sophia at the end of the hall, speaking with a doctor, her face pale. The liver failure was severe. While the surgery itself was a success, the recovery will be critical, I heard the doctor say. I walked over. Sophia's eyes widened slightly when she saw me. Liam, what are you doing here? Just checking in, I said, nodding to the doctor. How is he? The doctor adjusted his glasses. Mr. Blackwood, the patient's surgery went very well. Dr. Matthews has assigned his best team to monitor him. We just need to watch him closely for the next 48 hours. Thank you, I said, then turned to Sophia. Have you eaten? She shook her head, her eyes still red. I sighed, told the doctor to call me with any updates, and took her hand. Let's get you some food. In a quiet diner near the hospital, Sophia just mechanically stirred the soup in front of her without saying a word. He's going to be okay, I said, breaking the silence. She looked up, and fresh tears welled in her eyes. The doctor said, even with the transplant, he might only have 5 more years. I handed her a napkin. A lot can happen in 5 years, and medical science is always advancing. There could be a new treatment next year. She dried her eyes and managed a weak smile. Thank you. Really. Without you, my dad wouldn't have even had this chance. It's a transaction, I reminded her and myself. As we were leaving the hospital, a swarm of reporters suddenly surrounded us, camera flashes blinding us. Mr. Blackwood, is this your new wife? Mrs. Blackwood, what are your thoughts on Catherine Vance? Is it true your father is a patient at this hospital, Ms. Hayes? I instinctively pulled Sophia behind me, shoving my way through the press. Have some respect for the patient's privacy, I snarled. Once we were in the car, Sophia was still trembling. How do they know? The media is everywhere, I said, starting the car. From now on, you take a bodyguard when you go out. That evening, our pictures were all over the financial and gossip sites. Blackwood CEO and new bride spotted at hospital, and a real-life Cinderella. How Nurse Sophia Hayes captured the billionaire's heart. I put down my tablet and looked over at Sophia, who was in the kitchen brewing tea. She was wearing simple sweats, and her hair was in a messy ponytail, a world away from the glamorous socialites that usually filled those headlines. Did you see the news? I asked. Her hand jolted, nearly spilling the tea. I saw. They're exaggerating so much. Get used to it, I said, walking over to her. I was surprised by the pleasant aroma. What kind of tea is that? Chamomile and ginger. It's good for your liver, she said softly. I thought I'd bring some to my dad tomorrow. It struck me then that this girl's entire world revolved around the man lying in the ICU. A strange emotion surfaced. Make an extra thermos, I said. I'll go with you tomorrow. Sophia looked up, surprised, a flicker of something I couldn't decipher in her eyes. You don't have to. Part of the contract, remember? I said, looking away, the image of a loving couple. She looked down and murmured a quiet, okay. But for some reason, I felt a pang of disappointment in her voice. Late that night, I stood by my bedroom window, staring out at the manicure gardens. My phone lit up with a news alert. Vance Holdings stock plummets another 10%, erasing nearly $2 billion in market value. A smirk played on my lips. This is just the beginning, Catherine. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, Sophia sat on her bed, scrolling through the paparazzi photos from earlier that day. In the pictures, the way I shielded her from the cameras looked almost genuine. At 3 a.m., the shrill ring of my phone jolted me from a deep sleep. Mr. Blackwood, my apologies for the late hour. It was the on-call doctor from Presbyterian General. Mr. Hayes's vitals are a bit unstable. We need a family member to sign off on a change in medication. I shot up in bed, instantly wide awake. How serious is it? It's under control for now, but we need to adjust his treatment plan. I'm on my way. I hung up, threw on some clothes, and hesitated for a second outside Sophia's room before knocking. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Sophia, still nothing. A sense of dread washed over me. I pushed the door open. The bed was empty, the covers perfectly made. She hadn't slept in it at all. Her phone's GPS showed she was already at the hospital. I dialed her number as I hurried downstairs. It rang 7 or 8 times before she finally picked up. Liam. Her voice was hoarse, the background filled with the steady beeping of hospital machines. You're at the hospital. Why didn't you call me? I said, trying to suppress an unfamiliar surge of anger. My dad wasn't doing well. I didn't want to bother you. Stay where you are, I ordered, hanging up. I saw Arthur, awakened by the noise. Get the car. Now. The hospital corridors were eerily empty in the dead of night. I walked quickly toward the ICU and saw her from a distance, curled up on a bench. She was wearing only a thin jacket and clutching a wad of tear-soaked tissues. She looked up at the sound of my footsteps, her eyes swollen and red. She looked so fragile, a stark contrast to the composed woman I was getting used to. Where's the doctor? I asked, scanning the hallway. Inside, she stammered, trying to stand but stumbling from sitting for so long. I grabbed her shoulders to steady her. When did this start? Around 10. A nurse called and said his numbers were off. Her voice broke. I thought it was nothing serious, but just then, the ICU door swung open and Dr. Matthews emerged with 2 other physicians. Sophia immediately pulled away from me and rushed toward them. Dr. Matthews, my father, he's stable for now, the doctor said, removing his mask. His gaze shifted between me and Sophia. Mr. Blackwood, you're here as well? I nodded. What's the situation? A mild rejection episode. We've adjusted his anti-rejection medication. Dr. Matthews explained with a sigh. It's not uncommon after a transplant, but we'll need to monitor him very closely. Sophia swayed on her feet, and I instinctively wrapped an arm around her waist. Will he make a full recovery? I asked. If his vitals improve over the next 48 hours, he should be fine, the doctor said, checking his watch. Miss Hayes, you need to get some rest. We have staff here watching him. I want to stay, Sophia insisted. No, I cut her off. You need to sleep. She turned to me, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. He's my father, which is exactly why you can't afford to collapse, I said, softening my tone. I turned to Dr. Matthews. Please arrange for a private room for her to rest here, and notify me immediately if anything changes. Dr. Matthews nodded. I'll take care of it. Sophia opened her mouth to protest, but was overcome by a violent coughing fit, her body doubling over. I finally noticed the unhealthy flush on her forehead. I touched it. She was burning up. You have a fever, I said, frowning. I'm just a little cold, she weakly argued. Without another word, I swept her up into my arms. She was terrifyingly light. Dr. Matthews, could you have someone check on her as well? Put me down. Sophia struggled weakly. People are watching. Let them watch, I said, holding her tighter. I'm your husband. The diagnosis was a low-grade fever brought on by exhaustion and a weakened immune system. After the nurse started in 4 drip, half a sleeping pill finally sent her into a fitful sleep. I sat by her bedside, watching the worried frown that lingered even in her sleep. On impulse, I reached out and gently smoothed the crease between her brows. The soft touch of her skin sent a strange current through me. The vibration of my phone shattered the quiet moment. It was a text from Kevin. Mr. Blackwood just got word that Ms. Vance is hosting a birthday gala tomorrow night. Most of our mutual partners are invited. I sneered. Was Catherine trying to use her birthday to court new investors? How naive. Give me the guest list, I texted back. I glanced at the sleeping Sophia, then added another message. And prepare 2 gifts. One for Ms. Vance and one for my wife. The next evening, I brought a newly discharged Sophia back to the villa. Her fever was gone, but she was still pale. There's a party tonight. You're coming with me, I said, watching her reaction. Sophia, who was sipping a glass of water, nearly choked. Tonight, but I don't feel up to it. It's Catherine Vance's birthday, I stated calmly. It's just business. We'll make an appearance and leave. Her fingers traced the rim of the glass. Do we have to go? Are you afraid of seeing her? I challenged. No. She mumbled, looking down. It's just awkward. I stepped in front of her and tilted her chin up. Listen to me. The only person who should feel awkward is her, not you. Seeing her tremble slightly, I softened my voice. Go change. Pick out a beautiful dress. I want everyone to see that Liam Blackwood's wife is 10 times the woman Catherine Vance will ever be. Sophia's eyes lit up for a second before dimming again. I don't have anything to wear. The walk-in closet is full of dresses in your size, I said, releasing her. Go pick one. 2 hours later, Sophia appeared at the top of the staircase wearing a floor-length, champagne-colored satin gown. The cut was elegant, perfectly accentuating her slender waist and graceful shoulders. She wore minimal jewelry, just a pair of pearl earrings and a delicate diamond necklace, which made her look even more regal. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a nervous little twirl. My throat went dry. For a second, I regretted the idea of showing her off to that crowd of vultures. "Stunning," I said, handing her a velvet box. "Try this on." Inside was a Patek Philippe watch. Her eyes widened. "This is too much." "It suits you," I said, taking her wrist and fastening it myself. "It's getting late. Let's go." Catherine's birthday gala was held at the St. Regis, owned by her family's corporation. As our car pulled up, I could feel Sophia's breathing become shallow. "Nervous?" I asked. She nodded honestly. "I've never been to anything like this." "Just stick with me," I said, giving her hand a squeeze. "You don't have to say a word. Just smile." The ballroom was a sea of glittering chandeliers and tuxedos. The moment we entered, all eyes were on us. I noticed with satisfaction that many of those eyes lingered on Sophia longer than I expected. Liam, a portly CEO of a rival firm, boomed, making a beeline for us. "This must be your lovely wife, an absolute vision." "Sophia, this is Mr. Davenport of Davenport Industries," I introduced smoothly. Sophia offered a graceful smile. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Davenport." Her voice was steady, her posture poised. She showed none of the anxiety she'd felt in the car. I was secretly impressed by how quickly she adapted. "Liam," a familiar voice cut through the air behind us. I turned. Catherine stood under a crystal chandelier in a striking red dress, her makeup flawless, her lips the color of blood. Her gaze flickered to our joined hands for a fraction of a second before she put on a perfect hostess smile. "Thank you for coming." "Happy birthday," I said robotically, handing her our gift. "A little something." Catherine took the box, but her eyes were fixed on Sophia. "So this is the new Mrs. Blackwood. I've heard so much about you." Sophia nodded slightly. "Happy birthday, Ms. Vance." The air crackled with tension. Just then, Julian materialized out of the crowd, possessively wrapping an arm around Catherine's waist. "Catherine, darling, Mr. Chun is looking for you." His eyes swept over Sophia with unconcealed disdain. "Is this the little nurse?" My eyes turned to ice. Before I could say anything, Sophia gently squeezed my hand. "Mr. Reed, isn't it?" she said, her voice calm and even. "I've heard so much about you. Weren't you in investment banking?" What a coincidence. A few of the patients I've cared for were in finance as well. Julian's face tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all." Sophia smiled sweetly. "It's just a small world." Catherine sensed something was wrong. "Julian, let's go find Mr. Chun." Before she walked away, she shot me a loaded look. "Liam, we should talk later. Privately." "Not necessary," I said coldly. "I'm a busy man." As I led Sophia away, I asked in a low voice, "What was that all about?" Sophia bit her lip. "That guy, Julian, I saw him on the news once. He was being investigated by the SEC for his involvement in a pump-and-dump scheme." I looked at her, surprised. "You follow financial news?" "I've been trying to," she said, blushing slightly. "I want to understand your world a little better." Her words warmed a part of me I thought had frozen over. I was about to respond when a waiter stumbled into us, spilling a full glass of red wine all over Sophia's dress. "I'm so sorry, the waiter stammered, panicking. The front of Sophia's dress was ruined, a dark red stain spreading across the champagne satin. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. "It's okay," Sophia said, pulling at my arm. "I'll just go to the restroom and clean it up." My eyes scanned the crowd, and I caught a fleeting glimpse of a smug smile on Catherine's face before it vanished. Childish, I thought. "I'm coming with you," I insisted. Outside the ladies' room, I leaned against the wall and waited. A few minutes later, Sophia came out. The stain was lighter, but still very noticeable. "You can still see it," she said, looking down at her dress in dismay. I took off my tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "This will cover it." "Let's go home." "Leave already?" she asked, surprised. "The party just started." "We've accomplished our mission," I said, guiding her toward the exit. "We showed everyone we're happy, and we let Catherine know you're out of her league. That's enough." Sophia stopped walking. Liam, did you only bring me here tonight to make her angry? I paused. Her question hit a nerve, digging at a truth I hadn't wanted to confront. Not entirely, I finally said, choosing honesty. You truly look better by my side than anyone else ever could. Her eyes sparkled under the hallway lights, as if they were filled with stars. On the ride home, Sophia fell asleep, her head leaning against the cool window. I gently guided her head onto my shoulder. She shifted slightly, nuzzling into my side like a cat finding a warm spot. My phone vibrated. A text from Kevin. Sir, I did some digging. Julian Reed has been meeting with several of Vance Holdings shareholders. It looks like he's trying to acquire their stock behind Catherine's back. I narrow my eyes. Did Catherine have any idea her precious lover was stabbing her in the back? I looked down at the sleeping Sophia and texted back, keep watching him, and run a background check on every patient Sophia Hayes has ever cared for. Any specific area of interest, sir? Everything. I want to know just how many more surprises this seemingly simple girl had in store for me. When we got home, Sophia was awake but still groggy. As I walked her to her bedroom door, she turned and asked, would you like a glass of warm milk? It helps with sleep. My first instinct was to say no, but for some reason, I nodded. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at the kitchen island, watching the graceful movements of her back as she warmed the milk and added a spoonful of honey. A long-forgotten sense of peace settled over me. Here, she said, handing me the mug. Her fingers brushed against mine, and she pulled her hand back as if she'd been shocked. I took a sip. It was just the right amount of sweet. You're used to taking care of people, I stated. It wasn't a question. Sophia looked down, stirring her own milk. It's a professional habit, I guess. My mom passed away when I was young, and my dad has been sick for years. Is that why you became a nurse? Yeah, she said with a small smile. It's hard work, but it feels good to help people. An idea came to me. Do you still have your old patient files? The nursing notes you kept? Sure, I have them backed up on my laptop, she said, looking puzzled. Why? Send them to me tomorrow, I said, putting my mug down. They might be useful for one of our medical ventures. Her eyes lit up. Really? I can organize them for you. Make them more detailed. Seeing her face come alive with purpose, I couldn't resist reaching out and ruffling her hair. No rush. You need a rest first. The gesture was unexpectedly intimate. We both froze. Sophia's face turned a shade of pink I could see even in the dim light, while the soft feel of her hair lingered on my palm. It's late. You should get to bed, I said, breaking the spell and quickly leaving the room. Back in my library, I checked my email. Kevin had already sent over a preliminary report. Among Sophia's former patients were 3 senior executives from the healthcare industry and 1 retired official from the Department of Health. I tapped my fingers on the desk, a plan beginning to form. These connections could be very useful. At 2 in the morning, I passed by Sophia's room and saw a sliver of light from under the door. I pushed it open gently to find her asleep at her desk, her head resting on her laptop. The screen was still on, displaying a detailed patient care summary. I quietly closed the laptop, and as I moved to carry her to bed, I noticed a post-it note stuck to the corner of her desk. In neat handwriting, it said, Liam's stomach. Remind him to eat on time. An unnameable emotion swelled in my chest. I carefully lifted her into my arms, carried her to bed, and pulled the covers over her. Just before I turned off the light, I took one last look at her peaceful face. This woman, in her own quiet way, was starting to find her way into my heart. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't putting up a fight. The morning sun streamed into my library. I rubbed my temples, the coffee in front of me long since gone cold. On my monitor was the latest progress report for Blackwood Medical's new project. We were stalled again, stuck waiting for clinical trial approval. Pulling another all-nighter, Sophia's voice came from the doorway. I looked up to see her holding a breakfast tray. She was wearing one of my old cashmere sweaters, the hem falling to her mid-thigh, revealing her long, slender legs. I made you breakfast, she said, placing the tray in front of me. A perfect omelet, toast, fruit, and a glass of steaming milk. I frowned. I don't drink milk in the morning. It has cinnamon and honey. It'll help settle your stomach, she insisted, pushing the glass closer. You barely ate anything last night. I took a reluctant sip and was surprised to find it wasn't bad. Sophia stood beside me, her eyes drawn to my computer screen. Is the project in trouble? An approval issue, I said curtly, not expecting her to understand the complexities. But she leaned closer, her eyes scanning the technical jargon. Is this for the new dialysis machine? I raised an eyebrow in surprise. How did you know? You have a lot of books on medical technology on your shelves. I look at them sometimes, she said, pointing to a data point on the screen. This metric is why it's not getting approved, isn't it? The sample size is too small. My coffee cup hovered in midair. This nurse, who had never even been to college, had identified the core problem in seconds. The major hospitals have incredibly strict protocols, I explained. It took us 6 months just to find enough qualified volunteers. Sophia bit her lip. Why not try community health centers? Their equipment is usually outdated, and they have a high volume of patients. I bet they'd be thrilled to participate in a clinical trial. Community clinics? I shook my head. Their data isn't considered authoritative enough. But the sample size would be huge, she countered, her eyes lighting up. And if you can prove the machine works effectively even in a resource-limited setting, wouldn't it make a much stronger case for its reliability? I was stunned. I had never once considered that angle. Just as I was about to ask her more, my phone rang. It was Kevin. Mr. Blackwood, we have a problem. Vance Holdings just issued a press release. They've secured the exclusive U.S. distribution rights for Strauss MedTech. I shot to my feet. What? It gets worse, sir. The product they're distributing is the new dialysis machine from Germany, our direct competitor. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the phone. Catherine was declaring all-out war. After the call, I immediately convened an emergency meeting. Sophia quietly slipped out of the library, murmuring on her way out, "Don't forget to finish your breakfast." 3 hours later, the conference room was a cacophony of panicked executives. The Strauss machine is a generation ahead of ours. Vance is deliberately trying to sink us. All that R&D investment, it's all going down the drain. I let them vent, my silence gradually commanding the room. Are you finished? I asked, tapping the table. Johnson, give me a meeting with the director of the Metro Health Clinic Network for tomorrow. Reynolds, redraft the clinical trial proposal based on community-level standards. Finance, I want an updated cash flow report on my desk in an hour. The executives exchanged confused glances. But sir, data from community clinics won't be persuasive. Just do it, I said, standing to signal the meeting was over. After they had all filed out, I realized Sophia was standing in the corner of the room, holding a stack of papers. What are you doing here? I asked. I organized some notes, she said timidly, placing the folder on the table. These are case studies from my time working with patients in community clinics, along with a list of their most urgent equipment needs. I thought it might help. I opened the folder. Inside were dozens of handwritten pages detailing the risks and difficulties patients faced using outdated equipment. The last page was a meticulously crafted spreadsheet comparing the equipment deficits across different clinics in the city. When did you do all this? I asked, astonished by her thoroughness. The last few days, she said, fidgeting with her hands. I had some free time. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her hard on the forehead. You're a genius. Sophia's face instantly flushed crimson, and she stammered for a moment before fleeing the room. I watched her go, a real, genuine laugh escaping my lips. That girl was a constant source of surprise. The meeting with the Metro Health Network was a resounding success. The director took one look at the data Sophia had compiled and agreed to the partnership on the spot. This is exactly the kind of targeted innovation we need, the old director said, his voice filled with emotion. The big hospital equipment is great, but it's not designed for the realities of frontline community care. A month later, Blackwood Medical's new dialysis machine began clinical trials simultaneously across 15 community health centers, with a patient pool 5 times larger than our original plan. Better yet, our grassroots approach to R&D caught the attention of the Department of Health, which sent a special team to observe our trials. Catherine clearly never saw it coming. Her expensive, high-end German machine was overkill for the community market, while our product quickly dominated the exact sector she had ignored. At the celebratory dinner, I raised my glass to Sophia, who was sitting quietly in a corner. She wore a simple pale blue dress, and gave me a shy smile. In that moment, all I wanted to do was kiss her. After the party, I'd had a bit too much to drink, so Sophia offered to drive. On the way home, she looked adorable, her brow furrowed in concentration as she navigated the city streets. "Thank you," I said suddenly. She asked, glancing at me. "The community clinic idea. It saved the entire project." Sophia smiled. "I just gave you an idea. You were the one who made it happen." The streetlights cast shifting shadows across her face, softening her features. On impulse, I reached out and brushed my fingers against her cheek. The car swerved slightly. Don't do that. "I'm driving," she flustered. I chuckled and pulled my hand back, but then I caught a glimpse of a black sedan in the rearview mirror. It had been behind us for the last 10 blocks. "Take the next right," I said, my tone instantly serious. Sophia noticed it too, her hands tightening on the wheel. "Who is it?" "Not sure," I said, dialing my head of security. "We're being followed. I need a pickup." We made a series of turns, but the car stuck to us like glue. Just as I was considering driving straight to the nearest police precinct, the sedan sped up, cut us off, and screeched to a halt in front of us. "Brake!" I yelled. Sophia slammed on the brakes, the tires screaming as we narrowly avoided hitting the guardrail. A familiar figure stepped out of the sedan, Julian Reed. "Stay in the car," I ordered, unclipping my seatbelt. I got out, fury boiling in my veins. "Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Julian, dressed in an obnoxious pink blazer, gave me a sickeningly sweet smile. "Relax, Blackwood. I just want to talk business." "We have nothing to talk about," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Don't be so hasty," he said, stepping closer. I could smell the booze on his breath. "I know Vance Holdings is circling the drain, but I happen to own 18% of their stock. I could be persuaded to sell it to you for the right price." I narrowed my eyes. Did Catherine know her lover boy was selling her family's company out from under her? "Why sell to me?" "Because you're the only one who can afford it," Julian said with a greasy smile. "Besides, I know your marriage to that little nurse is a sham." I grabbed him by the lapels. "Say that again." "Don't pretend," he choked out. "Catherine had you investigated. You paid for her father's surgery. It was a transaction, nothing more. So that was it." Catherine was still digging. I released him, smoothing my shirt. "Your price. 80 cents on the dollar. How about it?" 50. "That's robbery," he shrieked. I turned to walk away. "Then hold on to it. When Vance goes bankrupt, that stock will be worth less than toilet paper." "Wait," he grabbed my arm. 60. "And that's my final offer." "Done," I said, shaking him off. "Have your lawyer contact mine in the morning." Back in the car, Sophia looked terrified. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, buckling my seatbelt. "He's just a clown." She started the car, but I could tell she wanted to say more. As we neared home, she finally asked in a small voice, Did he say something about me?" I turned to look at her. "Why do you ask?" I saw him pointing at me. The look on his face was... Her voice trailed off. I reached over and took her hand. Her fingers were like ice. "Don't listen to anything he says. Our relationship is defined by us and no one else." That seemed to comfort her. She squeezed my hand back and didn't let go for the rest of the drive. That night, I couldn't sleep. Julian's words were a stark reminder that the world saw our marriage as a sham, and Sophia would eventually have to face the brunt of those rumors. Around 3 a.m., I went to the kitchen for a glass of water and saw the light on in my library. I pushed the door open to find Sophia asleep at my desk, an enormous medical dictionary open in front of her, surrounded by pages of handwritten notes. I quietly picked up one of the pages. It was titled Common Complications with Dialysis Machines and Suggestions for Use in a Community Health Setting. This silly girl was staying up all night studying for my job. I carefully lifted her into my arms. She stirred, unconsciously snuggling closer and letting out a soft, cat-like murmur. In that moment, a wave of protectiveness so fierce it startled me washed over me. As I gently laid her on her bed, her eyes fluttered open. She grabbed my sleeve, her voice thick with sleep. "Leo, go back to sleep," I whispered, brushing a stray strand of hair from her forehead. "I dreamed. You didn't want me any more," she mumbled, half asleep. My heart clenched. "Never." "Really?" She was already drifting off again, her voice barely audible. "Really?" I whispered, leaning down to kiss her forehead. I promise. I walked out of her room and dialed Kevin's number. I want to know where Julian Reed got that stock. Also, draft a stock transfer agreement. The buyer will be Sophia Hayes. Ms. Hayes? Kevin asked, surprised. That's right, I said, looking at the moon. It's time she had some real security. At breakfast the next morning, Sophia was clearly avoiding my gaze, probably embarrassed about her sleep-talking. What are your plans today? I asked casually. I'm going to the hospital to see my dad. And then, she hesitated. I thought I might look for a job. A job? I can't just do nothing all day, she said quietly. I called an old colleague. There might be an opening at a private clinic. I put down my coffee cup. Why not work for Blackwood Medical? We happen to need a clinical consultant. Sophia's eyes widened. Me, no, I couldn't. I don't have a degree. Your ability is more important than a degree, I said, sliding a folder across the table to her. This is your official offer. You can fill in the salary yourself. She stared at the papers, her eyes welling up. Why? Why are you being so good to me? Because you deserve it, I said, meeting her gaze. And because I told you I would make you happy. Remember? A tear fell onto the offer letter, blurring the ink. She fumbled to wipe it away, knocking over her glass of orange juice in the process. As she scrambled for a napkin, I caught her wrist. Forget about that. Just tell me, will you accept? She looked up at me, her eyes shining with tears, and nodded. In that instant, I knew that this marriage, which had started as a transaction, had somehow become the most real and valuable thing in my life. And Catherine Vance was nothing but a ghost from a past I no longer cared about. That afternoon, Kevin called with explosive news. Sir, we found it. That stock Julian was selling is completely fraudulent. He used Catherine's trust to forge documents and embezzle assets from Vance Holdings. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. You have proof. Ironclad, Kevin said, practically buzzing with excitement. Should we report him to the authorities? Not yet, I said, twirling a pen in my fingers. Let's wait until our acquisition is complete. Oh, Catherine, you're about to find out what kind of sweet, kind soul your precious Julian really is. A clap of thunder woke me from a dead sleep. A violent storm was raging outside, rain lashing against the windows like a hailstorm. The clock on my nightstand read 1:15 M. My phone screen lit up. It was Kevin. Mr. Blackwood, Ms. Vance is at the main gate, he said, his voice tense. She's in bad shape. I scowled. Get rid of her. She won't leave, sir. She's completely soaked, just standing in the rain and crying. I threw back the covers and walked to the window, pulling back the heavy curtain. A flash of lightning illuminated the scene outside. Catherine was standing alone outside the gates. No umbrella, her expensive dress plastered to her body, her long hair matted to her face. Let her in, I said, hanging up. I grabbed a robe and went downstairs. I heard a noise from the kitchen. Sophia was there in her pajamas, brewing a pot of tea. She jumped when she saw me. I heard the doorbell, she explained softly. I thought I'd make some hot tea. Go back to bed, I said gently. I'll handle this. She hesitated, then nodded and went upstairs. I noticed she looked healthier, less fragile than when she first arrived. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. I took a breath and opened the door. Catherine stood there like a drowned rat, her perfect makeup running in black rivers down her cheeks. She looked nothing like the proud queen who had humiliated me at our wedding. Liam, her voice was a raw, broken whisper. Help me. I opened an umbrella and walked out to the gate. The cold rain soaked my slippers instantly. Get inside. She stumbled after me, her heels long gone, her bare feet leaving wet prints on the marble floor. In the living room, the teapot Sophia had left was still steaming. I poured a cup and handed it to Catherine. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold it. Julian, he tricked me. She suddenly burst into sobs. He embezzled from the company. He forged my signature to take out loans. I sat across from her, watching her break down with a strange sense of detachment. 6 months ago, this might have moved me. Now it just felt pathetic. I ran a background check. He's not an investment banker. He's a con artist with a criminal record. Catherine cried, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Liam, you're the only one who can help me. Vance Holdings is going to go under. I pulled my arm away and handed her tissue. Clean yourself up. She wiped her face, smearing the makeup even more. The banks are calling in their loans. The shareholders are suing me. I need a $50 million lifeline. 50 million? I raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of money. It's nothing to you, she pleaded, leaning forward desperately. I'll do anything you ask. Just please inject the capital. I took a slow sip of my tea. Anything. A flicker of hope crossed her face before it died again. I know you have a wife now. I'm not asking for her. I want 30% of Vance Holdings, I interrupted, at a 50% discount from the current market value. She gasped. That's basically handing the company over to you. Then let it go bankrupt, I said, standing up. Arthur, show Ms. Vance out. Wait. Catherine scrambled forward and fell to her knees, clutching the hem of my robe. I'll do it. I agree. I looked down at the pathetic figure at my feet and remembered her words from our wedding day. Julian is a sweet, kind soul. Don't you dare bully him. Be at my office tomorrow at 10 a.m. with your lawyer, I said coldly. Now, please leave. Fresh tears streamed down her face. Liam, do you really not love me anymore? What's so great about that little nurse? She's just a gold digger. That's enough, I snapped. Sophia is 1,000 times the woman you are. At the very least, she wouldn't humiliate her fiancé in front of the entire world. Catherine's face went ashen. You still hate me. No, I don't hate you, I said, my voice calm again. Hate implies that I still care. To me, you're just a business competitor. Nothing more. She collapsed onto the floor, looking as if her spine had been removed. Eventually, Kevin helped her out. The rain began to subside. I stood by the window, lost in thought, until a warm mug was placed in my hand. Drink this. It will help you relax, Sophia said. She had come back downstairs, wearing the same oversized sweater, her bare feet silent on the rug. I took the mug, our fingers brushing. You heard all that? She nodded, her eyes like clear pools in the soft light. Are you really going to acquire Vance Holdings? Yes, I said, taking a sip. It's just business. Sophia bit her lip. She seemed so broken. She got what she deserved, I said, setting the mug down. Do you know how much money Julian stole from her? 30 million. The exact amount Vance Holdings needed to stay afloat 6 months ago. Sophia's eyes widened. So if you had given her the money back then, it would have ended up in Julian's pocket, I said with a cold smile. Sometimes, fate has a funny way of being fair. Sophia was quiet for a moment. I'll go get you a dry pair of slippers, she said, before scurrying upstairs. Watching her go, a warmth spread through my chest. This woman, she was always thinking of others first. The next morning, Catherine arrived at my office right on time. She had put on her usual mask of makeup and designer clothes, but the light in her eyes was gone. The signing was quick. As she shakily signed her name for the last time, it felt like I was watching a proud peacock being stripped of its feathers. It's over, she whispered, dropping the pen. Not quite, I said, pushing another folder across the desk. Take a look at this. Catherine opened it, and the color drained from her face. This is the evidence of Julian's embezzlement, I said calmly. Enough to put him away for at least 10 years. Her fingers clenched the edge of the folder, her knuckles turning white. You knew all along. A little bit before you did, I said, leaning back in my chair. You have two choices. 1, you press charges and try to recover some of your losses. 2, you continue to protect your one true love. A single tear hit the paper, smudging the ink. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I'd recommend option 1, I added. After all, he's currently using your money to vacation in the Maldives with his new girlfriend. I slid a stack of photos across the desk. They were from a private investigator. Julian, with his arm around a blonde model, kissing her on the beach. The resort in the background was Catherine's favorite. A wounded, animalistic sound escaped her lips as she tore the photos to shreds. Why? Why would you show me this? She choked out. Because I want you to understand, I said, looking her directly in the eye, what exactly you gave up for him. She stared at me, a look of dawning horror on her face. You did love me. I did, I admitted, standing up. But now I love my wife. Catherine covered her face, sobs racking her body. I had my assistant show her out. I stood at my window, watching the woman who had caused me so much pain stumble into the elevator. Strangely, there was no victory no satisfaction, only a profound sense of relief. It was finally truly over. When I got home that evening, the house was unusually quiet. Arthur informed me that Sophia had been in her room all day and hadn't even come down for lunch. Frowning, I went upstairs and knocked on her door. Sophia, no answer. I pushed the door open and my heart stopped. An open suitcase lay on the bed, half-packed. Sophia was sitting at the vanity with her back to me. She hastily wiped her eyes and turned around. "Where are you going?" My voice was sharper than I intended. Her eyes were red and swollen. I was just going to visit my dad." "You're lying," I said, striding over and snatching the plane ticket off her desk. "To Seattle." "Why are you going to Seattle?" Tears streamed down her face again. I think you and Ms. Vance should get back together." "What?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She loves you so much. You two are the ones who belong together," she sobbed. I was just a replacement." "Who filled your head with this nonsense?" I roared. "Nobody. I just figured it out myself," she mumbled, looking down. "Last night, you were talking in your sleep. You said her name." I froze. I said Catherine's name? And the magazine today." She pointed to a business weekly on the floor. The cover was a photo of me and Catherine in my office, with the sensational headline, "Back Together, Blackwood CEO's Secret Meeting with Ex-Fiancé." Bullshit. I grabbed the magazine and ripped it in half. "Damn vultures." My outburst startled her, and she shrank back. I took a deep breath and knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in mine. "Listen to me, Sophia," I said, forcing her to meet my gaze. "My relationship with Catherine is purely business. There's nothing else between us. And if I said her name in my sleep, I was probably cursing her." She blinked, her eyes still wet. Really, I said, gently wiping away a tear with my thumb. "For the last 6 months, the only person I think about is you. Your smile, your kindness, your god-awful, healthy-tasting tea." A small laugh escaped her lips through her tears. "It's not awful." "It is," I insisted, my expression turning serious. "But it's the thing I look forward to most when I come home every day." Her face flushed a beautiful shade of pink. "Then, the ticket is canceled," I said, taking it and tearing it into pieces. "From now on, you are not allowed to leave my side without my permission." Her eyes lit up, but she tried to sound stern. "That's so demanding." "I can be more demanding," I said, scooping her up into my arms. She let out a small shriek as I spun her around. "Starting tomorrow, you're the new clinical consultant for Blackwood Medical. Your starting salary is $1 million a year." "$1 million?" Her eyes went wide. "That's too much." "Then you'd better work hard to earn it," I said, smiling as I kissed the tip of her nose. "Now let's go downstairs and have dinner. I'm starving." Sophia nodded obediently, but as I set her down, she surprised me by standing on her toes, planting a quick kiss on my cheek, and then darting out of the room like a startled deer. I touched the spot on my cheek where her lips had been. This marriage, which had started as a business deal, was the best damn deal I had ever made. 3 days later, the news of Catherine pressing charges against Julian was on every major outlet. At the same time, Blackwood Enterprises officially announced its acquisition of a controlling stake in Vance Holdings. At the press conference, a reporter asked a pointed question. "Mr. Blackwood, does this mean you and Ms. Vance are rekindling your old flame?" I looked at Sophia, who was sitting beside me in a tasteful business suit, looking as serene and lovely as a lily. "I'd like to take this opportunity to make one thing perfectly clear," I said, taking her hand in mine. "My wife, Sophia, is the love of my life. Our marriage is built on love and mutual respect, and it was never a transaction of any kind." Sophia looked at me, her eyes shining with surprise and unshed tears. "As for Vance Holdings," I continued, "it is simply another investment in the Blackwood portfolio. My team will be managing it, and my relationship with Ms. Vance is strictly professional." After the press conference, Sophia was quiet in the car. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked down at her hands. "Which part?" The part about love." I tilted her chin up, forcing her to look at me. "Sophia, I have never loved anyone the way I love you." Her tears finally fell, but this time they were tears of joy. I leaned in and captured her lips in a kiss, tasting the salt of her tears and the sweetness that was uniquely hers. In the distance, a familiar figure stood at the corner of the building. Catherine. She watched our car, her expression shifting from shock to pain and finally to a dull, empty resignation. But none of that mattered to me anymore. The Maldivian sun was like liquid gold, spilling across the surface of the infinity pool. I leaned back in my lounge chair, watching Sophia glide through the water like a mermaid. After 6 months of good food and happiness, she had a healthy, sun-kissed glow. "Liam," she called, swimming to the edge. She shook the water from her hair. "The water's amazing. Aren't you coming in?" I smiled and shook my head, still waiting for my lesson. This was our honeymoon. It had been over half a year since we'd married, but it was only last month, after all the corporate dust had settled, that we finally had time for ourselves. She hoisted herself out of the pool, water sluicing down her toned body. She wore the white bikini I'd picked out, and her skin looked like warm honey in the sun. I handed her a towel and pulled her into my lap. "Stop it," she laughed, her face flushing. "People can see." "Let them look," I murmured, kissing her. "Is it illegal to kiss my own wife?" She giggled and tried to squirm away, but I held her fast. Over the last few months, she had slowly shed her shyness and learned to enjoy the affection I showered on her. "Mr. Blackwood," Arthur said, approaching with his satellite phone. "It's your assistant, Kevin. He says it's urgent." I took the phone with a frown. "Go ahead." "Sir, great news." Kevin's voice was electric. Vance Holdings stock dropped another 15% today. The board is demanding Catherine's resignation. I gazed out at the turquoise sea. Julian's case is over. Sentenced 12 years. Ms. Vance testified against him. Cried her eyes out on the stand, Kevin reported, then paused. Are you and Mrs. Blackwood having a good time?" "A great time," I said, watching Sophia apply sunscreen. She made a funny face at me. "Tell the board I'll be back next week to handle it." I hung up. Sophia tilted her head. "Trouble at the office?" "Nothing I can't handle," I said, settling back beside her and taking her hand. "Catherine Vance is about to be forced out." Her fingers tensed for a moment. "Because of what Julian did." "Because she's incompetent," I said flatly. "Vance Holdings has lost 60% of its value in 6 months. It's a miracle the board has tolerated her this long." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "Maybe we should go back." I want to see my dad." And she hesitated. "I think you should be there to handle the Vance transition personally." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you telling me how to run my business?" "I'm advising my husband," she said with a playful wink. "After all, I'm a Blackwood Enterprises shareholder now, aren't I?" I burst out laughing and playfully tackled her on the lounge chair. "Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Blackwood." 3 days later, we were back in New York. Sophia went straight from the airport to the hospital. Her father's recovery had been remarkable. He was already up and walking. "Dad!" Sophia flew into the old man's arms. Her father patted her head lovingly, then looked at me. "Liam, my boy, thank you for taking such good care of my daughter." "It's my pleasure, sir," I said sincerely. "How are you feeling?" "Better than ever," he said, patting his chest. "The docs say I can probably go home in another couple of weeks." Watching them together, something softened inside me. I remembered a time when my own father and I were like that, before he passed away, leaving me with the weight of an empire on my shoulders. "Liam," Sophia tugged my sleeve gently. "Dad's asking what you want for dinner." "Huh?" I snapped out of my reverie. "Oh, anything. Whatever he wants is fine with me." Her father beamed, his eyes crinkling. "Then it's settled. We'll eat in the hospital cafeteria. I heard it's meatloaf night." Sophia and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. That night, I went to the Vance Holdings headquarters alone. The board was waiting. Catherine sat in the corner, a shadow of her former self. "Liam," the directors greeted me warmly. "You're finally back." After the pleasantries, I got straight to the point. "Regarding Ms. Vance's position, we've already voted to remove her," one of the board members declared. "We were just waiting for you to approve the new CEO." I glanced at Catherine. Her head was bowed, her hair obscuring her face. "I propose we keep Ms. Vance in her role as CEO," I announced. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Catherine's head shot up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "However," I continued, "a new management team will be installed, with oversight from Blackwood Enterprises." The board members exchanged looks, but ultimately agreed. After the meeting, Catherine stopped me in the hallway. "Why?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Why would you help me?" I adjusted my cufflinks. "This isn't about helping you. It's a business decision. The company needs a stable transition. An abrupt change in leadership would spook the market." She gave a bitter smile. Always the pragmatist. "However," I added, "I do owe you a thank you." "For what?" "For choosing Julian," I said, my voice genuine. "If you hadn't, I never would have met Sophia." The color drained from her face, as if I had physically struck her. She stumbled back a step, then turned and walked away, her posture stooped like an old woman's. Stepping out of the building, I dialed Sophia's number. "Where are you?" "Home. Trying to cook." Her voice was cheerful. "Dad said he was craving my baked salmon, so I'm giving it a shot." "Don't bother," I said softly. "I'm taking you both out to eat." "Really? Dad will be so happy." I hung up and looked up at the night sky. The stars were bright, just like Sophia's eyes. The man who once lived only for the deal now found his greatest pleasure in taking his wife and father-in-law out for a simple dinner. Life had a funny way of working out. 3 months later, the Global MedTech Summit was held in New York. As the CEO of Blackwood Medical, I was the keynote speaker. The audience was filled with the best minds in the industry, including Catherine, who sat quietly in the back. Blackwood Medical's innovation comes from our deep understanding of frontline healthcare needs, I said, my voice resonating through the auditorium. Our devices may not be the most expensive, but they're the most effective for the communities they serve. The large screen behind me showed footage of our machines being used in community clinics, including the very one where Sophia used to work. "I especially want to thank my wife, Sophia," I said, looking at her in the front row. It was her insight that opened my eyes to the incredible potential in community-based healthcare. Applause filled the hall. Sophia, dressed in a smart, pale blue suit, blushed beautifully. After my speech, a crowd of attendees surrounded her, asking about her nursing experience. She handled their questions with a newfound confidence. Catherine watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. As I walked past her, she spoke. "She's changed." "Excuse me?" "Sophia," Catherine said softly. "She's not the timid little nurse you married anymore." I smiled. No, she was always this person. She just finally found the courage to show it. Catherine was silent for a long time, then turned and walked away. I heard later that she sold her remaining shares and moved abroad. That was the last time I ever saw her. At the gala that evening, Sophia pulled me aside. "Liam, I have to tell you something." "What's so secretive?" I teased, pinching her nose. She took my hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "You're going to be a father." The world stopped. I stood there, completely stunned, my mind blank except for the frantic hammering of my own heart. "Are you serious?" I stammered. Sophia nodded, her eyes glistening with happy tears. "I found out this morning. I wanted to wait until we got home to tell you." I swept her up in my arms, spinning her around as the people around us gasped and cheered. I then set her down as gently as if she were made of glass. "Be careful," she laughed, playfully hitting my chest. "I'm going to be a dad," I whispered to myself, feeling a sense of completeness I had never known. A year later, we held a lavish party for our son's first birthday at the hotel where I had first met Sophia. Little Leo, dressed in a miniature tuxedo, looked around with wide, curious eyes from his mother's arms. "He looks just like you," Sophia said softly, "especially the eyes." "He has your nose," I said, stroking his soft cheek. "He's going to be a heartbreaker." On a large screen, a slideshow of our life together played. Sunrises in the Maldives, my father-in-law's physical therapy, lazy Sunday mornings at home. The final image was a photo from a year ago, when I had formally proposed to Sophia. "Remember that?" I asked, wrapping my arm around my wife's waist. "You almost got on a plane and left me." Sophia leaned her head on my shoulder. "Good thing you stopped me." "Any regrets?" She looked up at me, her eyes full of love. "The best decision I ever made was offering a handsome stranger a light on the worst day of his life." I leaned down and kissed her, oblivious to the world around us. In my arms, our son babbled a soft protest, and we broke apart, laughing, to each plant a kiss on his rosy cheeks. In that moment, I finally understood what true happiness was. It wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about finding the right person at the right time and having the courage to take their hand and never let go.